He described a shadow that played with him at night. We thought it was innocent. Everything changed after he said, "He wants me to come with him tonight, Mommy." Ethan was the kind of boy who brought light into a room without even trying. At just 5 years old, he had a wild shock of brown hair, eyes that seemed to glow with curiosity, and a laugh that could melt away even the hardest day. His parents, Aaron and Julia, adored him. Their small suburban home in Oregon was always filled with the sound of his running footsteps, his playful yelling as he chased imaginary monsters or pretended to be a superhero saving the world. Ethan loved being outdoors more than anything else. Every evening, when Aaron came home from work, Ethan would beg, "Dad, can we play outside? Just a little longer." He would stay out in the yard until the sky turned black, chasing fireflies and hopping around barefoot in the cool grass. Julia loved his adventurous spirit, but she also worried. Their backyard bordered a thin stretch of woods, and Ethan was fearless. He'd wander too far if left unsupervised. One evening, after a long day, Julia grew frustrated when Ethan ignored her call to come inside. "Ethan, I'm serious. It's late," she yelled from the porch. But he only giggled and disappeared behind the old oak tree, his tiny silhouette dancing in the fading sunlight. Annoyed and tired, Julia decided to scare him. Just a little. "If you stay out after dark," she called out, "the Hollow Man will find you." Ethan stopped. Slowly, he peeked out from behind the tree, his big eyes wide. "Who's that, Mommy?" Julia hesitated. She didn't know where the name came from. It just slipped from her mouth, almost as if it had been waiting on her tongue. "He's a tall, shadowy man who looks for little boys who don't listen. He takes them far, far away." Ethan's face went pale. "Is he out there now?" he whispered. Julia forced a laugh. "No, baby. It's just a story. Now come inside before it gets cold." He ran inside, but Julia couldn't shake the unease that washed over her. Something about saying that name felt wrong, almost like she'd called out to something. That night, as she tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at her and asked quietly, "Mommy, if I go outside tomorrow, will he come for me?" Julia smiled and kissed his forehead.
"No, sweetheart."
"He's not real. Mommy made him up." But Ethan didn't look convinced. He clutched his blanket tightly and stared at the window as if something was waiting for him outside. The next day, Ethan didn't ask to go outside. In fact, he didn't even glance toward the window. At first, Julia thought her story had simply worked too well. But by the end of the week, she noticed something odd. Ethan wasn't laughing as much. He sat quietly in his room, doodling strange shapes on paper. When she asked him what he was drawing, he whispered, "Hollow Man." Julia's heart skipped a beat. At first, Julia thought Ethan was just being imaginative. Kids often fixated on strange ideas, and maybe this Hollow Man was just another pretend character. But when she glanced at his drawings again later that day, her stomach knotted. Every sheet of paper showed the same thing. A tall, faceless figure. Its limbs were too long, stretching down like black vines, and its body was colored in with such intensity that the paper nearly tore. "Ethan, why are you drawing this?" Julia asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Ethan tilted his head, his small voice barely above a whisper. "He likes when I draw him. He watches me, from the trees." Julia felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Ethan, we talked about this. The Hollow Man isn't real. Mommy made him up." But Ethan just shook his head slowly.
"No.
He's real. He's my friend now. He comes to my window at night." Julia froze. "What do you mean?" Ethan's eyes lit up strangely, as if proud of what he was about to say. "He doesn't have a mouth, but I can hear him. In my head. He says I don't have to be scared. He says I can stay with him forever if I want." That evening, Julia told Aaron everything. He laughed nervously. "Jules, he's 5. He's just got an overactive imagination. Maybe you scared him too much with that story." "I know I did," Julia admitted. "But this doesn't feel like just a story anymore. He's different." Aaron shrugged. "I'll talk to him tomorrow. But come on, Jules. The Hollow Man." That night, Julia woke around 3 a.m. to a faint sound. Ethan's laughter. It wasn't the bright, cheerful giggle she loved. It was soft and wrong, almost like he was trying not to wake them. She crept down the hallway and peeked into his room. Ethan was sitting on the floor, facing the window, whispering and giggling. "Ethan?" she whispered. He didn't turn around. "Ethan, honey, who are you talking to?" He slowly looked over his shoulder. His face was pale in the moonlight. "I told you, Mommy. The Hollow Man. He says you don't like him, but he likes you. He says he can take me somewhere better. Somewhere I won't get in trouble." Julia's blood ran cold. She pulled him into her arms and whispered, "There's no Hollow Man, baby. It's just your imagination." But Ethan shook his head. "He's real, Mommy. He was standing under the tree tonight. He waved at me. He said soon I can go with him." By the next morning, Ethan refused to leave his room. He wouldn't eat breakfast. He just sat by the window, staring at the trees. When Julia tried to distract him with toys, he pushed them away. Later that day, Aaron tried to talk to him. "Buddy, what's going on? Why don't you want to play outside anymore?" Ethan's voice was flat. "Because he's waiting. And I don't want you to be mad when I leave." "Leave?" Aaron's face twisted in confusion. "Where are you going?" Ethan smiled faintly. "To his world. He says Mommy gave me to him. She said his name. That's how he found me." Julia's heart sank. The days that followed were the most unsettling of Julia's life. Ethan no longer acted like the boy they knew. He barely spoke, and when he did, his voice was monotone, as if he were repeating words someone else told him to say. Every night, Julia and Aaron would hear noises coming from his room. Soft scratching against the walls, as though tiny claws were dragging along the plaster. When they'd rush in, Ethan would be sitting on the floor, staring at the corner, his fingernails raw and red from digging into the wall. "Ethan, stop!" Julia would cry, pulling him away, but he'd just smile faintly and whisper, "I'm making a door. He says I have to make a door for him." Aaron started losing his patience. "Enough is enough, Jules. He's just acting out. We need to take away his crayons, his toys, everything he's using to feed this fantasy." But Julia wasn't so sure. She had started hearing strange noises too. One evening, as she tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at her with wide, dark eyes. "Mommy, don't sleep tonight. He's coming." Julia froze. "Who's coming?" Ethan smiled. "You know who. The Hollow Man." That night, she woke to the sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps creaking across the hallway floor. Her breath caught in her throat. Aaron was asleep beside her, and Ethan's room was down the hall. Slowly, she got out of bed. The hallway was dark, but she swore she saw something. A shadow, retreating around the corner near Ethan's room. "Ethan?" she called out softly. No answer. She opened his door and found him standing at the window, his hands pressed against the glass. "Baby, what are you doing?" He didn't turn around. His voice was cold. "He's closer tonight. He says he's going to take me soon. He wants me to say goodbye to you." Julia grabbed his shoulders and turned him around. His eyes were glazed, like he wasn't fully there. "Ethan, listen to me. There is no Hollow Man." But Ethan only smiled a slow, chilling smile. "Yes, there is. And Mommy, he says you called him. He says you belong to him too." Aaron and Julia decided to take Ethan to a child therapist the next day. They hoped it was all just some psychological issue. The therapist, Dr. Hargrove, spoke with Ethan for nearly an hour. When she came out, her face was pale. "Your son. He's talking about things I can't explain. He describes a man with no face, no mouth, who whispers to him at night. He says this man touches his window waiting for him. I've seen kids with imaginary friends, but this is different. He talks like he's under a spell." "What should we do?" Julia asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Hargrove hesitated. "Get rid of anything that connects him to this presence. Drawings, stories, even words. And if this continues, you might want to consult someone beyond psychology." That night, Julia burned Ethan's drawings in the backyard. The pages curled into ash as the faceless figure dissolved in the flames. But as she turned to go inside, she swore she heard a voice, deep and distorted, coming from the dark trees. "You can't take me away. He's mine now." After that night, Julia couldn't sleep. She heard whispers in the dark, faint scratching on the walls, and sometimes even the sound of someone breathing right outside their bedroom door. Aaron tried to calm her, but even he couldn't ignore how their once happy home now felt cold and heavy, like something invisible was watching them. The real fear came 2 nights later. Julia woke with a start to the sound of Ethan crying. She ran to his room, only to find him standing on his bed, his tiny hands pressed against the ceiling as if something was pulling him upward. His eyes were rolled back, and his body jerked like a puppet. "Ethan!" Julia screamed, grabbing him down. But he was stiff, almost too heavy for her to hold, as if he wasn't her little boy anymore. Aaron rushed in, pale with shock. "What's happening to him?" Ethan suddenly went limp in Julia's arms, his breathing shallow. When he opened his mouth to speak, the voice that came out wasn't his own. It was deep, guttural, and wrong. "He is mine now. You called me. You gave me his name." Julia screamed and pulled Ethan close, sobbing. "Leave him alone. Please, take me instead." But the voice only laughed, a horrible sound that seemed to vibrate through the entire room. The next morning, they called a local priest, Father Delaney, who was known for performing exorcisms. When the priest arrived, Ethan sat in the corner of his room, silent, his face turned toward the wall. Father Delaney took one look at the boy and crossed himself. "There is something here. I can feel it." He set up candles and began to pray, sprinkling holy water. first, Ethan didn't react. But then he started to scream. "Stop! You're hurting him!" Julia cried. The priest kept praying. Ethan's body convulsed, his tiny fists clawing at the air as if fighting something unseen. Then suddenly all the candles went out. The room plunged into darkness. Aaron fumbled for the light switch, but when the lights flickered back on, Ethan was gone. He was standing at the far end of the hallway, his head tilted, staring at them with a wide, unnatural grin. "Mommy," he said, but his voice wasn't his. It was low, distorted, and hateful. "He's angry now. You shouldn't have called him here." Father Delaney's face turned white. "This is no child's imagination. This presence, it's ancient, and it's feeding on him." That night, Ethan refused to sleep. He sat awake in his bed, whispering to someone only he could see. Julia stayed by his side, holding his hand. "Who are you talking to, baby?" He smiled faintly. "The Hollow Man. He says we're gonna play a game. He says I have to choose between you and Daddy." Julia's heart stopped. "Choose? Choose what?" Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Who he takes with him when he leaves." Julia and Aaron barely spoke for the rest of that day. Both were terrified, but neither wanted to admit it out loud. Ethan's behavior had gone beyond anything they could comprehend. No doctor, no therapist, and not even the priest seemed to have control over whatever was happening. Father Delaney called them in the evening. His voice was heavy. "I don't think I can help you. This presence is too strong for me alone. If you want to save your son, you need to find a way to break its bond with him. It's feeding on your fear." Julia's hands shook as she hung up. "Aaron, what if we can't save him?" Aaron clenched his jaw. "We'll save him. Whatever this thing is, it can't have our son. Not while I'm alive." That night, they decided to keep Ethan in their room, hoping he'd feel safe. But Ethan wouldn't sleep. He sat cross-legged on the floor, humming a strange tune Julia had never heard before, his little voice sharp and eerie. Around 3 a.m., the room grew unbearably cold. Julia woke with a start to see Ethan standing at the foot of their bed. "Mommy," he said in a voice that wasn't his. "He says it's time. He wants me to go with him." Julia bolted upright. "No, Ethan. You're not going anywhere." The lights in the room flickered, and the closet door creaked open by itself. A dark shape began to form in the corner, tall, thin, and faceless. It wasn't just a shadow. It was real. Aaron grabbed Julia's hand. "Get Ethan. We're leaving this house now." But Ethan didn't move. His feet were planted to the floor as though glued there. He looked up at the figure and smiled. "I told you, Mommy. He's my friend." The dark figure stepped closer, its long fingers reaching toward Ethan. Julia screamed and lunged forward, pulling Ethan into her arms. The moment she touched him, a burning sensation shot through her arms, like fire under her skin. Aaron shouted, "Take me instead. Leave my son alone." The shadow stopped moving, its faceless head tilted as if considering the offer. Then, without warning, it rushed forward, wrapping the entire room in darkness. Julia felt something cold and heavy pressing on her chest. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. She could hear Aaron yelling, but his voice was fading, like he was being dragged away. And then silence. When Julia woke, the sun was rising. She was lying on the floor, her head throbbing. "Ethan?" she whispered, sitting up. The room was empty. "Aaron?" No answer. She staggered through the house, screaming their names. Every room was empty. The front door was wide open, as if someone had left in the night. Out on the front porch, Julia found only one thing: Ethan's small, torn pajama shirt lying in the grass. Weeks later, Julia is still searching. No one believes her story, not the police, not the neighbors, no one. The house stands empty now, but sometimes, when she drives past it at night, she swears she can see a small figure in the window, a child, just standing there, staring at her. And once, just once, she heard a voice on the wind, a small, familiar voice whispering, "Mommy, he's my friend now."